Come on, come on, come on, come on. Sing it with me. Come on, come on, come on. SBE, SBE. I've been in the manosphere for a long, long time, but nobody watches me. SBE, SBE. My content's are born, my pussy is sore, so I created SBE. Sit right back, let me tell you a tale about a group of weak men going straight to hell. I'm talking about them PhDs, make the ghost of Booker T go weak at the knees. And you all know who I hate the best. It goes by the name of BGS. They're making me sick, it's plain to see. Now come on everybody, won't you sing with me? SBE, SBE. I've been in the manosphere for a long, long time, but nobody watches me. SBE, SBE. My content's are born, my pussy is sore, so I created SBE.
The content of this channel is for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification button. And please, feel free to share the video. Thank you.
Yo, what's cracking, man? I'm Gigi, man. You tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. It's the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, with no chasers, man. Straight up. Now, before I get things started, I'd like to give a shout out to all the haters out there, man. I hope y'all passing a good afternoon. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification button if you find the information that you receive here to be of benefit to you, or if it entertains you, or if it amuses you, whatever the case may be. And also, I would like to shout out all the members of the Green Gorilla channel expeditiously. Ben Cannon, Kenton, Sherlin Woe, Leon 008, Black Men Being Brutally Honest, Artisan MC, Dub Will, Mr. Good Dad, Dar, Third Coast X, and Lamar Johnson. Big up to y'all. Big up to Rais Moajid, Roderick Jackson, Michael Ross, 63rd Samurai, Devon Love Ridge, Ishmael Samad, The Watcher, Barnolas, Hostile Adept, Red Pill Revelator, and Kill the Game. Big up. Big up with Dr. Thunder, BGS Ibmore, Jason Hales, Charles Finney, Interesting Thought, Until I'm Not, Naomi Gary, J. Cleveland Green, The Toxic Masculinist, Pulpit 28, and Broken Blade. Big up. Larry R. Seth Son, Afro Troop TV, Show Me Spain Man, Seven Coast Dojo, Anthony Davis, I'm Just Jules, and Honest Look, Ricky Dawson and Stefan. Big up. Big up True 7360, Mr. Me Too, Call for President, Gold Professors, AKs and Curtains, H-Town, Rogues to Bill Monger, Adrian Thomas, Electrician 480, Binga, and Cutting Up with the Jones. Big up. Big up Zanko 1, D. Scott, Path Guy 74, Pete Rock, Aaron Peters, Vincent Lindsay, Quiz the Poet, Black Wizard, Jazz Tech, Shadow Observer, and Troy Warren. Big up. Big up Mrs. KP Bailey, Alan Wiley, The Face, Life of Commerce, AI Apostle, Timothy Blewett, Jeffrey Speed, Marvin Battle Jr., Adam and Nick Nats Mouse. Big up. Big up Black Uru, Dr. Tree, 77 Base X, Brian McMurray, K. Reness, Charles Rogers, Rick Ross, Sandra Jean, Charles Gilmore, Greg, and Barry Little. Big up. Big up Mr. Valentino, Cameron 87, Dr. Rock, Mark Swift, Odd Collar, Nana Watts, Coach Hotep, Old Soul Chief, Mr. Blue Collar, TD Hip Hop Media, and True Maine. Big up. Big up Mr. Heat, Sir Anthony, MLR, Universal 178, Rasheed Barnes, Emma Smith, DHA Double, Kalanja Kala, and W. Pierre 1. Can't forget Force Windu, can't forget David Carroll, and can't forget Kevin Samuels, man. So big up to all those individuals, man, both here and in the hereafter. Shout out to Robert Wicks, Shine Language, Chris Flowers, Christopher Burton, Daxby, J Live, Rashawn Phillips Searles, Keith Bass, Nick, Albert C., Dr. Ben Vincent, I'm the Light of My Father, Waffle Weave, Darnell Smith, Excalibur, Preserve Prisoner, Taz, Dragon 59, Jake Bailey, Mr. Michi Momal, and the Sangwa. Big up to all y'all, man. Thank you so much, man. Appreciate it. You deserve a round of applause. Thank you so much again for supporting the Green Gorilla channel, because you don't have to do anything for me. It's not requisite. I'm going to do what I do anyway, but thank you so much for supporting the channel, man. And if you want to support the channel because you find the information valuable, entertaining, here's how you do it. What's good, everybody? I'm the G with a PhD, and you're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel, the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up, no chaser. Today, I want to introduce you to my new membership program that consists of 5 levels where you can invest in the Green Gorilla channel on a monthly basis and receive level-specific perks. Memberships are special because they improve the quality of the content of the channel and will help me to be able to keep the channel going. Now, to participate in the Green Gorilla channel membership program, all you have to do is hit the join button, which is located right next to the subscribe button on my channel page. Now, for all of my subscribers who decide not to participate in my membership program, nothing will change. The content will keep coming the way it always has. Thanks for watching, and be careful out here, people. Bless. All right, man, we're back. I'm GG. You're tuned in to the Green Gorilla channel. It's the place where black men can express themselves freely, straight up with no chasers. I brought a friend along today. And, other people can, join in at a little bit later time. But at the current moment, I got my friend Sand Dog here. What's cracking with you, bro?
What's going on, dog team? I'm up here chilling, man. Chilling. Like I said, just
Chilling.
but I had to roll out of the bed and do some push-ups, get it going.
I hear you, bro. Ain't nothing wrong with that, man. You know what I'm saying? Getting that money. You know what I'm saying? You got to be able to do 50 push-ups, bro. You know what I'm saying? That's just off GP.
Yeah, facts.
You gotta be able to get down and get 50 in, bro. That's just a man law.
That's true. That's true, man. That's true. But nah, man, you and I was rapping, man, and the title of the show is "It Pays the Cost to Be the Boss," and again, paying the cost to be the boss. When you look at civilizations around the world, right? There are several ways that a state could be formed, right? So you have voluntary states where maybe in West Africa of old and ancient times, or Samaria perhaps, where before Nimrod, where farmers got together and agreed, to work together. Then they expand and, from family, clans, tribes, into whatever confederacies, that would exist. And then you also have states that are formed through conflict, right? And so, to my knowledge, right, most states are formed just that, through conflict. And so when you look at Black America and how it's being shaped, and even in the macro, if you look at Africa, both of these groups of people have not had the opportunity, in a sense, to duke it out like other civilizations, right? In order to find out, okay, who's going to be in charge and what direction we're going to go in, right? And so for us, it's going to be a much longer process to get to where we believe we want to go, because a lot of our infighting, so to speak, is intellectual, right? And so without the ability to pull a Shaka Zulu, and grab people by their ponytails or their afros and say, we're going this way, that's why it appears, at least for us, that there is a lot of friction and that, we're not making progress, in certain areas, right? So if you look at China of old, man, what you would have the first emperor of China, Zhao Zing, right? Zhao Zing existed probably during what you would call the Warring States period of China. So that tells you everything, right? So you got the Warring States period, and then you got the Spring and Autumn period. And pretty much during that time in China, between all of these different states, right? So you got Zhao Jing, who's the king of Qin, right? That's Qin, right? Which is one of the Chinese states. So this is what China was at the time, right? So you would have the state of Zhao, Yan, Qi, Wei, Han, and Chu. And basically, what my man Zhao said was, look, my ambition is to rule everything under heaven, right? Again, which is China, because in old China, they believed that there was earth, China, and then heaven. So my man said, hey, I'm going to rule everything under heaven, which is all of China itself, right? And so you go through the Warring States period, which for the most part is so there's a lot of infighting, and then you get to the Spring and Autumn period where local municipalities, in a sense, kind of fight, they begin to fight each other over control and everything else, all the way up to what I believe is 2021 BC, where Zhao Zun finally unites China. And you're talking about just years of, man, you're talking about dudes. So for people who think that all these other ethnic groups of people just magically woke up with their nations, right? And they've been kumbayaing each other. And forever, we just been a bunch of random and scattered Negroes doing as we please. That is all a lie, right? Because other groups of people, right? Other nations that we know as industrial powers today, again, for Japan, I'll save that for the nameless protagonist, right? Because he could really go into depth with that. But when you look at China and when you look at what we know as the United Kingdom, and let me just finish with China. And so, with China in and of itself, for Zhao Zing, look, he was bribed by one of his generals was bribed and attempted to manipulate him into portrayal. His enemies attempted to isolate him through several assassination attempts, right? So attempts. So this way he was stop trusting the people around him, which he was already on the fence about, right? And then and then he would get with some of his family members, and then ultimately his son, and then they would go on and conquer the rest of China up until I think what it is 2021 BC, where he actually becomes the emperor of China, right? And then further west in the United Kingdom, the Roman Empire leaves, right? And then the Vikings, the Vikings come in there, and they're raping and pillaging and ransacking and doing what they do. And then some Germanic people called the Saxons enter England, and then they end up repelling the Vikings and establishing what will later become England and several Anglo-Saxon states. And then it will be split into two kings, and then those two kings would have ambitions of, hey, we're going to take Scotland and everything else. And then they go, they go back and forth in years for wars until you get England, and then ultimately what's called Great Britain, which will become the world's first global empire, right? So this whole idea of that, to tell you the truth, the Africans themselves were probably living more so along the peace and much better off than these other groups of people during that time in history. So again, a lot of that history is either in the Mali manuscripts, if they were ever to be interpreted, probably in the hieroglyphic or the Nubian writings, if they were ever to be interpreted. And if you were ever to get what's under the grass in Congo or under the Sahara, you may actually get to see a complete history of what life was like in tropical, in tropical Africa, back in the past. But I wanted to come here and, bring up these points and talk about other civilizations and how they were formed, to include our United States, right? And to include our United States and what will be the formation of white, right? Ultimately, just to let you know that all these other groups of people were not sitting fucking around kumbaya-ing each other. Whatever cruel shit the Chinese and the Japanese did to each other when they were fighting, they learned it by doing it to themselves first, right? Whatever cruel nonsense that the Europeans imposed on other people, guess what? They spent centuries up there fighting back and forth, and by the time they would get to the Aztecs, us, or the people of India, so to speak, they already perfected what their crafts were and what their systems were and how they go about it. So just this whole idea of I mean, this is just part one of the conversation, right? But just this whole idea that we were, that in a sense that, we were like these, scattered hooligans, and for some reason, everybody else found a magical way to get along, and we couldn't. That's a lie.
Okay, so let me just get this straight, right? So paying the cost to be the boss, just so people don't get it twisted, is this about like paying women so that you can be the head of your household?
No.
Because I'm guaranteeing you that's what the average guy's going to think paying the cost to be the boss is. And the reason why they're going to think that is because, let's just be frank about it, most men, who are gravitating towards this space tend to think in terms of, gynocentrism. I mean, let's just face it, man. They're going to be like, pay what? Pay who? For what reason? And, this is not about paying women in order to be in control or, like trying to assert or position yourself as a high value man so that your wife will actually pay attention to you and not fuck with some loose ragtag man. That's not what this is about. Okay?
No.
I would assume that paying the cost to be the boss means paying for it in blood.
Correct.
I would assume.
Correct. Because remember, these are men that are looking to control, like I said, that are looking to control their environments, right? So they want to control the environment, and they want to dictate, in a sense, the course of history and how things are going to work, right? So remember, even if you go back to the Nubio-Egyptian complex, remember, back then, people lived in nomes, right? And all these nomes were their separate chieftaincies, right? Until you get Narmer or Menes, right? Who's coming out of the south, or correct me if I'm wrong, he comes from the south, out of Tasseti, right? And he decides that, hey, I'm gonna unite Upper and Lower Egypt, right? Hence what you get is one of the world's oldest relics of history, which is Narmer's palette, right? And Narmer is showing you, right, how he claimed victory, right, of both the Upper and Lower Kingdom, right? Which is why on one side of the palette he would have the white crown for Upper Egypt and the red crown for the Lower, right? And so when you see those two serpents that are put together, that represents that king at the time of his rule has unified both you know what I'm saying, both upper and lower Egypt, right? And so again, so when you look at societies and how things are shaped, you know, again, even in the Bible, right? Nimrod the Cushite, the Ethiopian, the first of mighty men, the mighty hunter before the Lord, goes into southern Iraq and takes over the land of Shinar. And then, you know, and out of that is how you probably get Sumer, Mesopotamia, Akkad, you know, so on and so forth. So when you're talking about paying a cost to be the boss, right? Paying a cost to be the boss, this is in regards to men terraforming their environment and through unity, right? So a lot of times, right? So just so black people know that unity for many societies and many civilizations and many nation states did not come through mutual consensus, right? These guys had to duke it out in order to determine which way this nation state or this people was going to go.
All right, so if there's a disagreement, then you fight to find out who the boss is going to be. I guess that's the idea. I mean, you know, like there's a disagreement between who's going to control or govern a municipality, a geographical area, a nation state. I mean, I don't know, a principality. You know, who's going to be sovereign, who's going to be, you know, a vassal or a liege or whatever the case may be. You do that by violence or through violence.
Yeah.
Okay?
So yeah.
But then the question though is like, okay, one could argue black men are primed for violence against each other to a certain extent. I mean, the highest, I mean, I'm not talking about men elsewhere, like in Africa or the Caribbean. I'm talking about in the U.S., okay?
Yeah.
The leading cause of death for black men between the ages of 13 and 15 and 35 is homicide.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that, and how does it present a problem for, you know, the position that you're putting forth here? I'm just asking questions. I'm playing devil's advocate here.
No,
and then also,
no.
but also this is a two-part question. Also, isn't it the case that black men, particularly in the United States, have been primed to either reject the status quo and to, you know, behave antisocially, or to hyper fit into the system and to demonstrate or to exhibit virtue or masculinity by means of engaging in the market like a merchant or a member of the business class, like, which is anti-militaristic, quite frankly, especially the way we purport to be able to, you know, exemplify it. We never talk about, I'm about to dominate an industry through force. Like, I've never heard a black man really actually speak like that. All I hear is black men trying to shame each other's, you know, by demonstrating how many coins I'm able to collect in the white man's principality or whatever. But I never hear men say, I'm about to dominate an industry. I'm about to take over a state. I'm about to manage to manipulate and finagle my way in through fraud and force or whatever mechanisms that exist where I can control and govern myself. I don't hear that kind of talk coming from us. I'm being absolutely honest. I hear a whole bunch of, you know, well, how can I fit in, and, you know, what's just, what's fair, what's been done to me, what's wrong, or whatever the case may be. I never hear guys say, I'm about to take that shit. Fuck these white boys. I'm about to take this shit. Fuck these white women or whatever. I'm about to take their shit. Because they had the idea that they were going to take some shit. Unequivocally, unapologetically, they had that mindset about, you know, what they were going to do, working in their best interest. So all the morality just went out of the window. So what do you have to say about that? Like, what is it about us that refuse to, you know, assume the position of power because we haven't, is it that we're not educated this way? I mean, like, what is it?
Well, again, it's like I said, it's a combination of factors, right? So, okay, so one could say, so let's go with your street guys, right? Who in a sense, you know what I'm saying? Who in a sense buck against the system, right? You know, these guys, in a sense, right? This will be this will be, because remember, this is not a moral argument, right? So you're talking about, you want to be free, you want autonomy, you want the ability to choose your own path, right, so to speak, right? So again, guys who are criminals want economic mobility, right? They want the ability to make money. They want the ability to have the nicer, and the finer things in life. And ultimately, if a system is working against me, even if you were to research the reasons of crime, right? Lack of social capital, rejection from the society, right? So these are significant. So these will be groups of people who will say, well, fuck the society. If it's not working for me, right, I'm just gonna go and I'm going to kind of do my own thing, right? So at the end of the day, people who want independence or who will buck against the system will initially be deemed criminals by the larger society. So I'm certain at a time, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, John Quincy Adams, these people will be considered criminals, right? So, after the Boston Tea Party and they're telling King George, with two birds up, F you and your mercantilism, right? We have the right, we have the right to make money here too, right? And you know what, King George, right? F you on this territory. We're going to take it. We're going to make it the United States of America. And, again, away we go, right? So it's just that the element that you have on the street is not tied to a larger nation, right? So these guys weren't sent here by a larger nation, they weren't sent here by a larger nation and backing of government funds, and everything else. So pretty much what they can and cannot do is based on economies of scale of what they have access to. Right.
So here you got an objection right now, because there's a real deep aversion to street dudes in this space. I mean, and I think it has to do with women more than anything else. That would be my guess. My assessment of it is, why are there so many guys? One or two things is happening here. Either one, they're jealous that these dudes are fucking the women that they want to fuck, or number two, they're mad that these guys or destroying their reputations so that they aren't really actually respected by the white society, proper at large. So it's an excuse. It's almost as if, okay, I'm not treated well because look at what these niggas are doing, which leads to a kind of disrespect for all of us, the guys who are doing the right thing. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, again, right, nothing so much about America was not built on the right thing, right? Again, shout out to Jay-Z, American Gangster, created by the white, mastered by the black, absorbed by the fiend, right? So it goes back to what I said about neoliberalism, right? We live in a place, it's a market. If the market wants it, why can't I peddle it? Why can I not do it? So again, one could say, according to the religious law of the Judeo-Christian or the Abrahamic religious complex or philosophies, that ultimately the end of slavery or emancipation of it will be the goal. But at the end of the day,
I'm just asking the question because this is going to be presented to you.
No. So but that's what I'm.
What's going to be? Let me stop you. Because what's going to be presented to you is the idea that there's a group of black men who are non-productive, who are street niggas. Okay, they're pookies or ray-rays. They're not. This is the language or the nomenclature or the vernacular that's going to be utilized. They quote unquote are non-productive. Okay, meaning they don't fit in. They're antisocial and don't fit into the system. Okay, so therefore they need to be punished. And they need to be brought to heel, just like white people would say, for the betterment of black folks in general, because they give black folks a bad name. So, I mean, but your argument is something like this. The only, this is your argument. If I just write me, tell me, hold on, write me if I'm wrong. Yeah. Okay? But your argument is this. White people, they say one thing and they do something else. they talk about morality, they talk about civility, they talk about justice, but in reality, what they have been able to secure for themselves has, for the most part, been done through force or fraud. Okay.
Yes.
And so we can talk about civility, we can talk about, mores and norms and values of, etiquette and things of this nature. But in reality, if you look at what took place or transpired in their acquisition of what occurred in the New World, I mean, they took it by force. They didn't create civil society out of, like just having conversations with each other and, eventually, coming to modus vivendi through, dialogue. They fucking fought it out. They duked it out. Like the Portuguese, the English, the French, and the Spanish, they literally fought for this landmass and who was going to be the lord of it. Okay? Yes. That's what they did. Okay? Now, what the system announces as success at the current moment is quite different from how this place was founded and terraformed to begin with. Okay? I mean, now there's the establishment of law and civil institutions and legal and institutions and things of this nature. So one could argue the place has been subdued, okay? But it hasn't been subdued in such a way that it works for your benefit. Okay? So I'm just trying to sketch your argument here.
Correct.
And the vast majority of guys really actually want to exist in a system that's already set up and established, but they're already excluded and marginalized and pushed to the edges of it. There's no way for you to actually get in. The corner has been sold up. The only way that you can actually get to find a way in is to force your way in by some means. And guys aren't really actually actively thinking about forcing their way in. They're thinking about finding ways to be accepted and to be assimilated in. So what do you think about it? Am I wrong about this? And the reason that they have this aversion to street dudes is because they're not operating or working the way, the society at large expects for them to operate.
Yeah, correct. But they're gonna yes, but they're gonna operate that way again because I told you, and like I said, you better articulated what I was saying, is that these are people that are marginalized and pushed out. So of course they're going to find their own way, right? It's the same thing on the macro level. I remember in the 90s when I was in school, studying finance, and there was warning from political experts at the time about how America and Europe were behaving, about who could be in NATO and who couldn't. And the warning was, you need to be careful because while you're finger wagging and saying who could be in your club and who can't, what's going to happen the day these people decide to form their own clubs? And then now you're going to have real problems, right? When, as of right now, you can pretty much have everybody under one tent and you can kind of, work your problems out. But if you push these guys out and they form their own club, right, you're gonna end up, you may end up with serious geopolitical consequences, as a result of it. Now, for the other aspects of it, right, when you're looking at, when you're looking at, ways to skin a cat. So as you know where Sandog stands. Sandog says if this was, 18 whatever, and we're, like I said, and we're set free, I'm looking at America, hey, let's do it right. I'm getting on a boat and adios, and adios, I'm out of here, right?
So what do you say to a guy like this? He says, street dudes are not our warriors or rebels. Street dudes are black men that occupy the bottom rung of society where they destroy their own people. I'm laughing my fucking ass off. Like, what do you say to that? How do you respond to it?
That's not true at all. That's that's not true at all. Malcolm X was a street dude. Malcolm X was a street dude. I mean, you had Garvey, right? You had, you've had Elijah Muhammad, right? So now, because the thing is now, you're getting into what I despise, right? Well, what I don't like, which is the kind of like a talented 10th argument, right? Because the people on the ground. So, for example, let's look at St. Louis after the police shootings, right? Those were dudes and kids on the street that was organizing, together to deal with police brutality and organize, and racism and everything else in St. Louis. And then Black Lives Matter, right, with the quote and unquote educated people and the corporate financing and everything else, came to St. Louis, pushed those people out the way. Whatever remedies that was being offered by your local municipality or state government, that larger organization absorbed it and moved on, and those guys are still destitute without any, or they've been left destitute and without any reparations in regards to what they were fighting for. So a lot of movements start with your everyday man and woman. That's again, that's there. Like I said, that's there on the ground, right? So it's not this kind of, this kind of thing that we have, man. We really need to let that shit go, like about street dudes and all this, and everything else, because at the end of the day, we can all respect that Black America didn't make these people, right? This is something like, this is something that we have to acknowledge. Black America did not create the environment that would produce, that will produce these people. And if you were to understand, like I said, hold on 1 second. Let me just pull up the chart real quick. 1 second. Hold on. So let's do this. Okay.
I think more than anything else, look, this is the sentiment right here.
Yeah.
Right? That most people who consider themselves to be productive and respectable members of society, for the most part, they're not willing to actually do anything violent. They're not actually willing to organize. They're not willing to actually take any risk in order to grasp power, because their goal is not to grasp power at all. Their goal is to actually fit into and to assimilate to an existing system. They don't want to forge a new system. They have no intention, no foresight to think about being able to wrest control themselves. That's not what they desire to do. These guys want to be productive within the existing scheme of distribution, which they don't control. Okay? Correct. They have no desire whatsoever at all. Okay? None. They have no intention of doing anything to establish any control themselves. And the idea is that there's something in human nature called spirit. Okay, one could argue. Like, you can see this in animals, okay? Like dogs, for instance. There's some dogs who are contentious and they'll fight, and they just have like courage, okay? Not to say that it can't be developed in every dog or whatever the case may be, but some dogs are more, aggressive than others, okay? Now you have to train the aggression in certain dogs in order to get them to be good guard dogs or protective dogs, okay? But some are not fit to the task. This is not what they are, okay? Not every dog is going to be a protection dog, okay? Or a guard dog. Not an effective one anyway. Some are suited to the task, some are not. Now one could argue that the vast majority of guys who, fit into the existing scheme, they could, but they don't want to take that risk because to them, it's not about being able to wrest control or have power themselves. It's about fitting into a scheme and kind of, riding the waves, so to speak, not creating any problems, not drawing any attention to themselves, so as to get what they can for themselves. I mean, that's how I perceive it, okay? Like, and not to say the street guys aren't self-interested, I think that they are, but like the idea is, who's gonna have the spirit to actually say, fuck this shit, and to resist. Give me liberty or death. Fuck it. I'm going off, you know, like Bonnie and Clyde. Because you have to have, like, I mean, at least the Black Panthers understood that there was something called revolution, and you have to be able to risk your life in order to have it. Freedom. Like, freedom requires the risking of your life to have.
Yes.
You can't have freedom without risking your life for it. I mean, even like the founding fathers of this country said, give me what? Give me liberty or what?
Give me death.
Now, if you're not willing to risk your life for it, you're not going to get it. I mean, even in the civil rights movement, those people were risking their lives. Now, you could call it, you know, passive resistance or whatever the case may be, and I get that. Okay, and I understand your position about that. But at least they knew the danger associated with the form of resistance that they were engaging in, even if it wasn't violent. Okay? What are guys risking today? What are any of these dudes risking today? Is anybody willing to risk anything? That's the question, right? And one can argue the only people who are willing to risk anything are the niggas that you call street dudes.
Correct.
Like, most guys aren't willing to risk anything. They're willing to do what they're told. And look, let's just face it, bro. Let's just keep this a buck, bro. Passport, brother, man. Look, let me just say this. Come on up and talk, man. Come on up. Because this is the thing that fucks me up also, right? White people sell more drugs than anything else, bro. Than anybody else on the planet, man. In America, man. Nobody's sitting there talking about them being, okay, well, these are incorrigible, ignorant white people. Like, I don't hear that shit being said about them at all. They don't even say it amongst themselves. Go look this shit up. If you're in disagreement about what I'm talking about, black people don't sell or do hard drugs to the same degree as white people. That's a fact, empirical fact. They sell more meth, more crack rock to each other, more cocaine, more heroin, all of that shit. But you never hear them say, on the account of having done that shit or doing that shit, because it's ongoing, they still are doing it. You never hear them say how fucked up they are, how they're selling their people up the river by doing it. You never hear that shit. You never, ever, never hear that. We never hear that.
Or the fact that...
I mean, I never hear it. And look, I'm not saying that their pursuits are noble or any, this is not what this is about, man. Like, figuring out what their intentions are. Like, we're not talking about what their intentions are, because these people have, like Sandog said, the street dudes have not been trained by anybody. They just thrown out just like regular most black men in this world are thrown out there and survive. Or black people in general, whether it be black men or women, just survive. Find a way to make it work. Now, some people come from, they come from good families or whatever, middle class families and all this kind of shit. But there are a group of men out here who are willing to take risks. But the idea that this is only a black phenomenon, that's a fucking lie, bro. That's a lie. To argue that only black people engage in criminal behavior is a fucking lie. It's a lie. Like, what do you think the mafia was? Was that some black shit? It was not. What about the Yakuza? Is that some black shit? No, it's not. What about the triads? Is that some black shit? No, it is not. Here's the thing. You got a group of guys who I assume, and this is just the way I perceive it. You got a group of guys who believe that basically they are to be the select among black men. But even if you don't like street dudes, how do you clean up the street dude situation? You go out there and you fucking knock their fucking heads in. You don't get white people to do it. You fucking get out there and do it. If somebody is around your house acting up, fucking up, creating mayhem and shit, what do? I'm telling you, I'm just gonna be honest. I'm just gonna be fucking honest. What a lot of black men will do is they will fucking call the police just like a bitch would to come out and fucking handle it. You're not gonna go out there and fucking handle it. You're gonna call 911 and just like a bitch would to check the nigga in her house, you'll do the same shit to check a nigga in your community instead of fucking handling your goddamn self, being the police of your own goddamn hood. Now tell me I'm lying about that shit. Tell me I'm fucking lying about that shit. I'm being honest about it now. Motherfuckers want order, but they're not willing to do what it takes to have it. You want motherfucking street dudes to be, you know, like brought to heel, then you gotta fucking do it. But nobody is willing to actually do it. You'll call a white boy to come do it. Because you're scared to do it. You're too fucking shaking in your boots to fucking do it. And this is not about romance. All we're saying is there's a thin line between the type of person who has the type of character who will resist and fight back and a group of people who will be docile and assimilate. And the question is, if you want sovereignty, you got to pay for it in blood. You don't just get it because it's supposed to be. Oh, well, I hope that people treat us correctly. Or I hope people treat us civilly. They're not going to do it. They don't do it to each other. If you look at medieval history, it's chock full of basically exchanges of internecine warfare where they're killing each other. They never talk about white on white crime or European on European crime. I never heard of it. Have you heard of it? Have you ever heard of white on white violence?
No.
Just read medieval European history prior to the Enlightenment. Nobody talks about, like, I've read it. I know the history of Western thought. I know it. I know Western history, Western man. Nobody talks about or discusses their infighting as some sort of internally pathological activity. They never do. Like there was a whole bunch of criminal activity and fighting over like shit based, like simple shit, like coffee, sugar, the trade of tobacco. They were killing each other over that. Now, if we kill each other for anything, I'm not saying it is, you know, like this is what the norm should be, but it's a fact about the world. But the way we perceive it is the way a white person tells us to perceive it. And I mean, the guy just went into a whole discussion about like how China became unified. It didn't come about through doctrine or through arguments or through dialogue. It came about through the clash of steel. That's how it came about. Am I wrong about this? Maybe perhaps I'm fucking wrong about it. Maybe I'm lost on it. If you want control, all he's saying is paying the cost is actually paying in blood, putting your dick on the chopping block, taking a risk. But now, manhood, I'm gonna tell you what manhood is in this culture and in this society. It's basically neatly wrapped up in a package of getting your nails manicured, wearing a fucking three-piece suit, and going to a fucking office building somewhere and working. This is the vision of contemporary masculinity. I'm being absolutely fucking honest, man. But, you know, like actually, you know, having a nice car and, you know, keeping your hair coiffured and shit like this and having nice clothes and, being metrosexual and shit. This is the common conception, contemporary conception of what manhood is. Going out and working for a corporation to get your money. Or starting a small business. This is what manhood is. But in history, I guarantee you, the big men in history were not merchants. They weren't businessmen. They were none of this. None of the big men in history were businessmen. Genghis Khan was not a fucking businessman. Napoleon Bonaparte was not a fucking businessman. All of the Henrys in Europe were not businessmen. King Normer, who basically unified Upper and Lower Egypt, was not a fucking businessman. I'm just being honest about it. Muhammad, who unified the Middle East, was he a fucking businessman?
No.
He wasn't a businessman. I'm just being honest about this. They were not businessmen, man. They were people who used force and violence in order to secure and to terraform territories. That's what they did, bro. Now the question is, you don't see this kind of spirit in especially people from, the United States, black men from the United States. You just don't see this mindset. What mindset do you see? I mean, I'm not to say that none of it has ever existed here, because it has. Like somebody like David Walker, who wasn't even a slave. He was born a freedman. But he saw the condition of slaves and was like, fuck that. And he used Christianity as a way to make an argument that you need to fight these motherfuckers for your freedom. Bro, we already been over this shit yesterday, bro. I already been over the black community talk yesterday. This is not about the community writ large. This is about you and what you want for yourself. It's about what you want and what you desire for you. And I was telling Sandog earlier, look, I want you to think about this shit. Just think about it for a second. Take a woman like Oprah Winfrey. Does she have any fucking kids?
Nope.
So how much money does Oprah have? What is Oprah's net worth?
Shit, I don't know. A few billion. Is it about?
I'm about to look it up. Oprah is worth $2.5 billion. Okay? Oprah's worth $2.5 billion. Right? 2.5. What the fuck is gonna happen to her money, man? Now, I mean, she can create foundations and schools and things of this nature, but she has no one to directly leave her legacy to. Yo, look, Oprah's leaving like $30 million to her dog. Yeah, she's got power, no doubt. She has the power of influence, okay? But the point is, who's going to carry out her legacy and her orders? Now, typically, this is done through genetics. You have children and you raise them and you enculturate them into your value system, and then they can go out and carry on your legacy. She doesn't even have it. So the question then is, in a similar fashion, you got a lot of guys who, like, they have no legacy. They haven't reproduced. So what's the point of going out and gathering and collecting a bunch of material shit and you have nobody to give it to? What's the point? That's an honest, sincere question. What is the point? collect all the coins. You get like, if the aim is to get rich and to avoid and to sidetrack any problems, and we already know that women can be problems. We already know that shit. Okay? But the question is, so let's say, for example, you move through life, you matriculate through life and avoid and sidestep all of that. But then you get 50, 60 years old and you ain't got no seed, no kid, no nothing, no nothing. What the fuck are you going, what is the accumulation of everything for? What's the point? Go ahead, Sandal. I'm asking a question. So you can come up, anybody can come up if they want. I'm asking a question. I want to know. Explain it to me. And let me just say this. Look, I'm not advocating criminal activity at all. All we're advocating for and saying is, if you want to run some shit, you got to run it. And you got to be willing or prepared to engage in violence to run it.
Because listen, whether it's streets of New York or Capitol Hill or the top floor of some business building, people are engaged in conflict, right, for control, for whatever their purposes, again, for whatever their purposes and desires are. So this is not something that's unique, like I said, to only street dudes, right? This is called competition, right? So even animals have competition for territory. Right now, Apple and Samsung are competing with each other right now, right? You know what I'm saying? Again, you know what I'm saying? Going back and forth. So based upon where you are in life or whatever sphere of influence that you're in, right? Competition and going back and forth with people will look very different. But in regards to physically controlling land, right? Physically controlling land, you're always going to be engaged in some form of hot warfare or physical struggle in regards to controlling landmass, right? So if you look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict today, what's happening between the Ukraine and Russia, what's happening between India, Pakistan, and Kashmir, right? So there's always going to be, right? You're always going to go fisticuffs whenever it goes to land. So when America wanted whatever they wanted out of Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, or whatever the case might be, right? A lot of us got packed up and pushed out and was like, what? We put group boots on the ground. So if Ray Ray and Pookie want to control the block from between Pennsylvania Avenue all the way up to Cozine in East New York, Brooklyn, then they're going to have to lace up their boots. They're going to have to lace up their boots and go out and shoot. The same way if you want to control, Southeast Asia or prevent China, to prevent the Chinese from taking over your allies, along the China Sea or whatever the case might be, you're going to have to do something. Right. And so if you actually want control over the environment, and the military will always say this, no matter how technologically advanced we become, you will always need boots on the ground to control what happens on the ground. Right. It's virtually, like I said, it's virtually impossible. And so this is what, again, just coming back to it, this is what we're talking about, saying that it pays, like I said, it pays the cost to be the boss. Not all of, I'm not going to say all. So when we look at different ethnic groups of people in Black America, we're looking at us, we're looking at ourselves through the lens of how America sees us, and we're looking at the other people through the lens of how America sees us, instead of actually looking at human nature and history for what it really is. Right.
Okay, so let me just say this. Okay, so let me do some voice, not voice, but some housekeeping. Shout out to Mississippi Delta guy. He says, why do some of us act like society is not about a ruthless competition like the Game of Thrones? Are we willfully ignorant or just have our heads in the sand? Personally, I think it's the way we've been indoctrinated. We've been enculturated. Most people are enculturated to accept their position wherever they fall into the social scheme. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I mean, I don't think that I am. You've been made to think that do what you can within the confines of the system. You're not like actually, most people aren't actually thinking, well, how can I buck the system and break it so that it works to my advantage? Or if I don't like the system, let me destroy it. I mean, this happened in Europe several times. It happened in America.
Yeah.
What do you think the revolution was? They were like, man, fuck this system. We don't like it, fuck it. I'm gonna die for this shit. I'm going to die for something different. I mean, the question is, you know, hey, like, what are you willing to die for if you're willing to die for anything at all? Most people aren't willing to die. They're just not. We have not been bred into a warrior culture. We haven't. I mean, it's just a fact, man. We have not been bred into a warrior culture. We haven't. There's nothing about, except if we go to the military. Then we get bred into a warrior culture that uses our bodies to achieve their objectives. It ain't no strange secret. Like, this shit ain't working to the benefit of black folks. Did the Gulf War work to the benefit of black folks? Did the Vietnam War work to the benefit of black folks? Did the war in Afghanistan contribute to the enhancement and the amelioration of black people's lives?
Crickets.
I mean, specifically, I'm not, in a roundabout way, like saying, the rising tide lifts all boats argument. Like, personally, I think that you got a bunch of aristocrats and plutocrats, and they engage in warfare, and they save the spoils for themselves, and they don't basically allow that trickle down kind of, benefit to, basically filter to everybody else. I just don't see it, man. In fact, the economy in and of itself is a financialized economy. And the way the warfare is engaged in now, everything is done through corporations and non-governmental organizations and shit.
Yes.
Like, I mean, just pay attention. But I'm not going to get into all that shit right now. And then Leon says, Gigi, thank you for calling out the fake red pill. They really want to be within the status quo of the system. That's not red pill. That's actually, it's blue pill. A lot of guys, the red pill only exists for guys in this space pertaining to bitches, bruh. Let's just keep it a buck, man. Now, I mean, I'm not trying to be ignorant by saying that, but like, red pill is connected directly to dating and mating shit. It's not connected to like deeper political intrigue and shit like that and neo-global politics. Mm-hmm. It's just, well, what's going on in family life or dating and mating life. And I'm not saying that you should neglect or not pay any attention to that. But it's just bigger than just, like, if you think about, like, understanding reality, it goes deeper than just understanding reality about dating and mating, bro. I mean, I'm a philosopher, right? And, I have a PhD in philosophy. And I've never heard any significant conversation in the Western philosophical tradition at large related to dating and mating, man. I'm just being honest, man. At its core. I mean, here and there's discussions about the proper relationship between men and women, okay? I'm not to say that there's no thought given to it, but as it pertains to going out and terraforming and acquiring shit, women aren't a fucking thought. They're not on the forefront of guys' minds. This is not, they're not. Shout out to Giagami and shout out to Toya. What's going on, Toya? How you doing? This is not what, they're not worried. Like, you think Napoleon was tripping off like, damn, I'm doing this so I can get this chick to be on my dick. I'm going out here and I'm going out here conquering shit, you know, and being militaristically aggressive so I can have these hoes.
Okay, you set that life you want to.
I'm not saying that they didn't have access to women. I'm pretty sure that they did.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got to think, some practices that you engage in, man, are like self-defeating. Okay? That's just my viewpoint, man. Like, the more you chase after something, sometimes, especially if it's superficial, the more you have a tendency to have that thing escape from you. It's like trying to grasp water.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not the aim. The goal should not be pleasure or sex in and of itself, but a higher, like, these guys weren't motivated just by, I'm not saying that they weren't motivated by it at all, okay? Because some of the spoils of war are sex.
That's Genghis Khan.
10 Toes Down said Napoleon did everything for vagina. I don't know about that. But Sandog, go ahead, man.
Okay. It's like this, man. Like, you know, again, you have your approaches, right? So even if you look at African Americans after slavery, right? So after slavery, you would have, different approaches, right? So you would have Booker T. Washington and you would have, W.E.B. Du Bois, right? So Booker T. Washington would say, right, and look, we want to, being born from slavery and having a front row seat for the birth of Jim Crow. Hey, let's handle our business. Let's fly under the radar, right? Make whatever deals that we have to make and fly under the radar and get what we need, as a people, in our community, on the ground, right? So again, we've been living with these people and we know them and we understand that agitation is pretty much not the best way to go. Now, if you take that model, and so you have W.E.B. Du Bois, who felt, again, a little bit different, right? And said that, you have to stand up and you have to confront, and agitate or, push back, against, what is called, what's called the system or white, or what you would call white supremacy. Now, so this is a way to go about it. So, for example, if you look at certain other countries, and then one of the difference will be is that other people in their own countries, right, will have breathing room to make moves that African Americans in America necessarily won't be able to have, right? So let's take Asia approach. As a matter of fact, let's compare Asia and Africa, right? Looking at these models of Du Bois and Booker T, right? When in places where people have breathing room, so to speak, where they will be the majority of populations. China and Japan, after World War II, said they looked at the Western Hemisphere and said, okay, we're going to take that technology and we're going to take, that know-how, right? So when I was a kid, I would see Asian people, right? They'll buy a car or a train or whatever, ship that thing back to China or Japan, break that thing down to the bolts and rebuild it and practice in rebuilding it. So at a time, it will be a cheap or inferior product until they got it to where it needed to be. So for example, when I was a kid, a Datsun was considered a piece of crap. If your dad didn't drive a Chevrolet, your family was whack, or whatever the case might be. And then you fast forward a simple 10 years later, Datsun becomes Nissan and Infiniti, and Biggie Smalls is rapping about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's like, okay, go and get that know-how. A Chinese woman will go into Macy's and take pictures of a dress, look at what it's made of, and then decide to, reproduce it. And so shout out to Western countries who went into China. And China would be like, okay, what are you building? They're like, oh, for real? Okay, hey, give us the blueprints, give us the schematics of whatever it is that you're building. And the companies would go, they would complain to the embassy, and then they would tell the embassy, hey, don't tell the Chinese government it's us because, we still want to make money. And the embassy is like, I can't do nothing for you if you're not willing to, come forward, right? But there's like, no, we want to fly under the radar and make money in China, right? So China said, okay, cool. You could come here, you can do this, but in the meanwhile, they absorbed all of that know-how. And in a few short decades, took their people from abject poverty, right to where they are now, right? And so I'm talking about the Booker T model and the macro. Whereas in Africa, a lot of those leaders went for, they did the protesting, they did those things, but then for a lot of those leaders, their education ended up being, their education for the most part ended up being in like a lot of Western political thought, public policy and administration, and all these other things. So what happened was the Africans took a lot of Western systems, but they had no know-how. There were no metallurgists to get them to understand the resources that they had on the ground. No people from agriculture or agribusiness, right, to help them develop or to grow certain sectors. And as a result of that incompetence, they were exploited. My wife's home country, Nigeria, just built its first oil refinery. Just built it, right? So
Really?
Yes, it's just recently, man. Just recently. So for so long, the Nigerians had oil, they would sell it, and then America, Britain, or whoever would refine it and then sell it right back to them.
And let me just say this, like, look,
Yeah.
I have mixed feelings about the Booker T. Washington model. Now, let me just say this. I think in America, a lot of black men already were orientated towards the Booker T. Washington model. Mm-hmm. Like the men during Reconstruction were actually actively involved because black men had all the skills during that point. They were the laboring class, but they were laboring for free. Okay, I mean, not all slaves were just picking cotton, but the vast majority of them were. But I mean, not all of them were. Okay,
right.
Some African slaves or black slaves in America had, like skills, like carpentry or metalworking and shit like this. But the point is, the Ku Klux Klan fixed all that shit. Okay, they made sure that the black laborers were basically forced out of the market. But black people went and built their own towns. Black people actually got into oil speculation, and some of them struck it rich. But the point is, like, there's a difference between America and Africa. There's a difference because. There's a big, in terms of strategy and theater, there's a humongous difference.
Yeah,
Okay?
that's what I'm saying. But that's what I'm saying. I have a point. Like you're talking now, right? But I'll get to it. And that's what I said. Again, I recognize the difference in mobility, right? And the people on the ground. Like I said, the people on the ground that you're dealing with. But the problem is, so for example, I'll tell you this. So it just comes from my perspective. So just like the Civil War, right? I've participated in toppling a government and removing their institutions. And the business is an aspect of it, but then the institutions themselves are something different, right? So at the end of the day, what I've learned in warfare is that you can destroy land and property all day, but what you cannot destroy are ideologies, right? So though the people out of the Muslim world, right, have institutions or institutions or schools of thought that they built around their theocratic societies, right? And so there was no amount of shooting or anything that I could do or the U.S. government could do in regards to removing them from what their value system is, right? So all I'm saying is that from Sandog's perspective, I understand the destruction of property and these other things, but it would be what Carter G. Woodson was saying, adding to these points, that you're going to need your own institutions that will allow you to set your own standards, that will allow you to see the world from your own lens and not somebody else's. So, and not necessarily, and like I said, and not necessarily somebody else's. So in that pursuit, I think that this is something that we miss versus, the idea or the agitation for integration, right? Because now, again, once you get into integration, you're being bought into that society again. So ever since I've been in this space, I said, when people talk about coons and all this stuff, I'm like, they don't exist. Look, integration was the route that we went, and that's what we signed up. So
And mixture.
Yeah. So if this is the direction that we went in, people who think a certain way, whether you like them or not, are the direct will be the direct result of that, right? So we didn't, you know what I'm saying? So again, we didn't depart into, you know what? I'm not going to send my kid to that, damn the National Guard, right? I'm going to send my kid to the Garveyite High School. No, we sent them, what was that? The Arkansas 9, right? So we sent, we sent our children, our kids, our people, like I said, into these other institutions. So I get the fact that when you talk about business growth and land and everything else, but I'm telling you, man, I have a front row seat for those Afghans, for those Iraqis, and all the other people, Somalis, all the other people that I've seen, right? They are shooting up. Things are getting shot up and burned every day, but they have mainly through their religion or through theocracy, they have a school of thought. They have a school of thought or the way that they operate or a world lens that they have that no bullet is going to push them off of. And so I think that for us, like I said, I think that what happened for us, in America in many ways, as a people, there have been things that happened. There have been things that have happened that pushed us off our square, or even why you have a particular level of Negro dissatisfaction today is through, is like I said, is through those institutions, because the institutions will give you ideologies, philosophies, schools of thought that will influence the way that you function, right? So just like Sandog, right? I have a degree in finance, and my degree leans towards merger and acquisition, right? Then I go on to business development and sales, right? Then on top of that is the military. So in a sense, you could look at my education and say my education in a sense is based around conquest, right? So I'm going to have a modus operandi or way of thinking, right? You guys have been talking to me, in the space now for a couple of years, and you all know that I think a certain way, or I see things through a military lens, through a corporate lens, and through a diplomatic, like I said, through a diplomatic lens. And that all has to do with the institutions that I interacted with, the institutions that educated me, and the institutions that have given me the ideologies that I have. Right? And so I think this is what I believe, is that for Black America, in terms of, like I said, in terms of what you would call the Booker T. Washington path, because again, in conflict, things get destroyed all the time. The doctrinal word for defeat militarily is when you lose the will or the resources to keep going, right? But if you have a certain ideology, right? If you have a certain ideology, that's what you're going to do. So like, even if you look at Black America now, right? How do people respond to things? They go out into the streets and they protest, right? So even recently, when you saw those two kids that got kicked out of the state meeting in Tennessee, right? And so what happened? So even now, like I saw one of them, he had an afro, and he wasn't even giving a speech. He was delivering a sermon, and he was preaching, right? He was practically preaching and giving a sermon. So where would he get the idea to function like that, right? There's some kind of modus operandi. There's some kind of modus operandi that exists to get him to function that way, right? And so again, the way Sandog, so for me, the way Sandog sees the world, the way that I understand the world is how I got here. So like, and I'll tell you guys this last thing, and then I'll pass the mic, right? Because I was engaged in Reconstruction. The Iraqi government is gone, right? Their military and their paramilitary organizations are gone. So now the U.S., the Department of Defense, and pretty much the State Department are now the Iraqi government. And so we are now, in a sense, right? We are now, in a sense, engaged in Reconstruction, and we are doing now, after combat operations, which is called sweat miso operations, right? And so sweat miso operations in the military is sewage, water, academics, electricity, trash, medical, medical, and I forgot what the medical and other things that are medical and other things that are needed. So I go into a town. This is in Diyala province in Iraq. And, it's a complex, these are people living their lives in clay huts, all this stuff and everything else. And so the actual battle is over, right? And so, we had goofy things out there like, we're not here to win hearts and minds. And I'm like, fam, the war just ended. You just pulled down Saddam Hussein's statue. The Iraqi people are cheering in the streets, right? You need to adjust. You need to adjust your approach, or you're going to have problems. So even me, right? So I'm over a village. What do I have at my disposal? I got 7 Bradley. I have 7 M3A3 Bradley Scout fighting vehicles. That's mine. I have a tank platoon, right, in my hunter-killer team. I have Kiowa Warrior helicopters. I have Apache helicopters. I have mortars that are attached to me, a PSYOPs team, and artillery, right? All of that was attached to me. But I understood that if there's going to be success with us and the Iraqi people, that we have to have some kind of relationship, right? So I get off my Bradley and I talk to the people there and I say, who's the oldest man in the village? And I get the old men in the village and I begin to make a relationship with them, right? And I'm talking about while I'm there, I'm talking to them about what they expect and what they want and how can we achieve goals, how can we work in respect and everything else, right? And so I'm not going to sit here and bore you with the other details because it's all it's a pretty fucking funny story, but that'll be for another time. But ultimately, I'll add this one thing in there. So there's a paramilitary group there, the PKK, made of Kurds. And the Arab Iraqis and Kurds have problems with each other. And so the Kurdish guy talks to me and goes, hey, Lieutenant Sandor, we can help you patrol the streets. Not, hey, how about you give me some uniforms that say U.S. Army and then give me pictures of you and George Bush together, right? And then when I patrol the streets, and so my soldiers are like, why would he want that? And I was like, because if I were to do that, that means that I'm giving him authority. So whatever skull fuckery he's involved in here, right, he could say that he's also a part of U.S. forces or whatever the case might be. And so obviously, I ended up telling him no. He was somebody that agitated the local Iraqi population, right? And so I dealt with him. Not, again, I didn't need to do anything to him or anything like that. And so, I dealt with him and, I said what I said, and then that was quelled, right? And then the last thing that happened between me and those people was we got word that there was a terrorist, so to speak, right? And I'm just talking about not agitating a population. And so we arrested the guy, and it was a boy between the ages of 12 to 14. So instead of just taking him to the base, we bought the village elders to come, and we interrogated him. And only to find out that he was some young kid engaged in petty crime, trying to survive because his dad died in the war, and he left behind his young son committing the petty crimes, a wife and 2 daughters, right? So basically, he was trying to be the man of the house and make ends meet by committing petty crime. So we roughed him up, we roughed him up, told him we'll help him get on his feet and yada, 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 and all of that. And after that happened, me and that village developed a strong relationship. So the trust was there. They're like, okay, all right, we can trust this guy, right? And as a result of it, I was given 2 donkeys and a wife. She was 15, and I said no, right? But they offered me. You know what I'm saying?
They gave you a donkey and a wife.
They offered 2 donkeys, fam, and a wife.
Wow.
Right? You know what I'm saying? Because that's what happened. So that's what happened with me in that village, because I knew, right, again, being an African-American man, right, well, first of all, I understood because any military commander worth his salt is a historian. So there's 2 things I understood: Reconstruction and stop and frisk, right? Those are the 2 things. So I knew that I wasn't going to go in there and agitate. And as a result of that, during that time, there was peace with Diyala province. So when those Iraqis started, because Iraq was quiet for a long time, and then people started making roadside bombs and all this stuff and everything else. And I bet you it comes from 2 things. It'll come from a particular level of dissatisfaction, because again, America removed everything but didn't have immediate answers. So now you're going to have dissatisfaction. Then on top of that, I'm certain you had assholes that didn't have the smarts that I had and waved guns in people's faces. And then voila, right? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You get IEDs, right? And so it was the same thing. And so when I told that Iraqi tribal chief, I said, me and my soldiers will patrol the streets, right? But as long as there's not any wrongdoing or whatever, you know, we're not going to come into your houses. We're going to respect your women. You know, we're going to do this. And so we had, like I said, we worked together and we had those conversations. So even me, quote and unquote, as a superior force, I understood that I was on terrain in a country that wasn't my own, right? That wasn't my own, and that whether I had all the guns in the world or not, there are more Iraqis and Kurds than there are me, and I have to work, again, I have to work with these people because at the end of the day, it's called Operation Iraqi Freedom. So I'm just saying, from Sandog's perspective, from me and how I think and how I function, if I don't have, for me, if I don't have a military, right? If I'm on enemy ground, I don't have a military. I don't have any means of production to produce weapons, right? I don't have any connections with some foreign state that's going to come back me up. I have no navy or anything to protect my trade interests, right? You know what I'm saying, etc. Like, because remember, these guys, especially in America, they form states through violent means. General Washington or George Washington was a damn engineer for all intents and purposes, right? You know, he could make maps, understood mechanical drafting, fought in the French Indian Wars and all of the shit. These are guys that you're not going to pontificate with, right? Just like that criminal said in RoboCop to the nerdy dude, can you outsmart a bullet? So if I'm in that circumstance and I'm in hostile territory, Sandog would even be one. Unless I'm getting the fuck out of Dodge immediately, I'm gonna have to buy my time. So when I was making that comparison, right, between Asia and Africa, they have the freedom of maneuver, right? So they have the freedom of maneuver, and there will be definitely things that they could do faster, you know what I'm saying, in a sense, you know, than what Black America can, because you're being targeted, right? But in the same time, you don't have any means of production. You don't have any foreign allies or anything like that, and you're in this hostile territory, right? To, at least for me, to poke and prod the local population, right, that has a hostile disposition to you, I don't think necessarily is a good idea. You would need to buy your time first before you can get into other things, right? So even if you look at the Asian community on the micro in the United States, they don't vote, they don't do, again, they have their businesses, they have that, but what they have that you don't have is that they have geopolitical ties to other states, right? So this is why, so in a sense, right, this is why the Asian hate bill came out of nowhere, because at the end of the day, right, I can't go to the Philippines and ask them for help against China, and I'm knocking Filipinos in the head. And I'm damn sure ain't gonna get any wins with China if I'm knocking Chinese people, you know what I'm saying, in the head, so to speak. So it's just that from my perspective, based upon the circumstances that we were in, right? Because you already have the case study of what happened with Haiti. You already have the case study of what happened with the Maroons, right? I don't know how fast news travels back then or whatever. You already have the case study of what happened with the Seminoles, and you already have the case study of little Angola, you know, down in Brazil, right? So I'm just saying, if you could put Sandog, you know, back in time and in those shoes. So I'm looking at that case study, and I'm looking at all of those different outcomes, right? I probably too would say the same thing. We're not ready yet to rah-rah sis kumbah. We don't have the logistics. We don't have the access to infrastructure and everything else. So we're gonna have to buy our time a little bit, right? And we're going to have to buy our time a little bit and maybe perhaps become master diplomats. And then once we could kind of get to where we're going or what we want to achieve, we could do something different. Now, ultimately, if I end up getting proven wrong, you have to adjust, right? So that's what I'm saying. So you have to adjust if you end up getting proven wrong. But if you're in that circumstance to make that move, to make that, to say, okay, we need to agitate and we need to resist, and and you don't have any of the things that's required to raise an army or a navy or all the logistics and means of production that goes behind it. For me, I'm just saying that, I'm looking for the path of least resistance, even in my old books, right? And I'm shutting the fuck up and I'm bringing it to a head. So the FM 7-8 used to be the infantryman's manual. The FM 17 what was it? 97 was cavalry, 17 something was armor warfare. But basically, all of them said, when you come to an obstacle, right, it's best not, if you don't have to, don't fight through an obstacle or a fortified defense. If there's a bypass, you seek that bypass and you take it, right? Sun Tzu says the same thing. If you could achieve your objectives without fighting, for the most part, that is the best way. However, if circumstances prove that ain't gonna work, right? Then you make your adjustments. But to jump right out of the gate and do it, that would be, that would be a bit of an issue. So you would need time to either get a hold of whatever resources you have, or definitely build whatever institutions you have in order to establish, because remember, even for the army, it takes more than bullets and everything to make an army, right? You have to establish an identity. You have to establish a philosophy. All of this stuff goes into your diplomacy. So if you don't have institutions that are doing that, then that then complement or are synergized with your other actions, you're going to be doomed to fail. And that's just Sand Dog's perspective.
All right, man. Well, so look, we're about to wrap it up.
Okay.
We're about to wrap it up. You got some thoughts, Ad Media?
Yeah, I did. First of all, whenever I hear trickle down economics, I have a different term for it. I call it piss on you economics. Because that's what it is. It's piss on you economics. I'm gonna get all the money at the top. Then I might piss on you and give me a little money. But as you brothers have been talking about, black folk aren't the only people that have problems. China didn't get united because they were all kumbaya. That they went to war. They actually made video games on the Civil War with China. America started because George Washington and some other folks didn't want to be taxed without representation. So they went to bloody war over it. We fought a civil war in this country over tariffs, and not over slavery, but over tariffs. And a result of the South fighting over tariffs, 600,000 Americans died. So, as you said, the cost of being a boss is not what people think it is, especially in the black community. It's not about always getting pussy.
Well, I mean, look, pussy can be a motivating force for anybody. I mean, I guess.
Very true. True. I'm not saying that, but.
But I mean, because one could argue it is the case that like some guys, like rape, pilling, and plundering. Part of the fun was being able to have access to the pussy after you got through pillaging the nation state, or I mean, not the nation state, but the tribe, the village, the principality, or whatever the case may be. I personally, the conventional modern norms of warfare kind of, decry that kind of activity, I assume, right? Admiral Smoke.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, look, man, it's about thinking down the line, and it's not about just trying to find a way to assimilate and to be productive within their scheme and in their systems and in their institutions, but thinking about futurity and how to, you know, set up some sort of long-term strategy of how to get a foothold. But like, we don't think past ourselves. Like, but that's just a Western cultural phenomenon. It just is. Like, we think like white people. It just is what it is. Like, I mean, you know, some, like, I think there's a Native American tribes.
We all have an inner white man in us somewhere.
Yeah, I believe that to be the case. But I'm about to go check out Keep It 100. He's doing a stream in about 4 or 5 minutes, so I'm gonna check his shit out. That's what I'm gonna get into, T. Riddler. I'm about to check that out. But thank you, and I definitely want to you know, show some appreciation again for Toya. Thank you for supporting the channel tonight. I appreciate that. Giagami, thank you so much for your donation tonight. I appreciate it. Also for Leon. He says, thank you, you know, for calling out the red pill. Like, a lot of guys just want to fit into the system instead of trying to find a way to be a monkey wrench in the system, or to at least take control of it in the long run. Shout out to Mississippi Delta's guy. Thank you, man. Appreciate you as always, man. Your generous donations tonight, man. I appreciate it a lot. Okay. And I didn't read this one, but he says he learned a lot from his mentor, who was a British aristocrat. And he said he ruled with an iron fist and was ruthless against his competitors. He liked to say one has to crack eggs to make an omelet. Yep. You know, but a lot of these guys are trained in strategy, military strategy, and that's something that black folks just we don't receive it. Like, what training? What training do black boys receive in order to be global geopolitical players?
None.
It doesn't happen. I mean, on average, we can't even fucking read. But, you know, that's another conversation. Ignat's Mouse, shout out to you, man. Thank you for your donation. And also, thank you for the donations that I received from Cash App, LaKenzie, and Kalan. I appreciate you guys, man. And if you find the information here entertaining, useful, or informative, you know, the discourse here, you know, please, you know, consider a donation or whatever the case may be to Cash App, or, you know, either a super chat or a super thanks or something like that. But I'm about to sign out, y'all. Y'all be peaceful. And I'm about to end with this silly shit. I know it's silly, and it's not very diplomatic, but, you know, right now I'm a little pissed off about some shit, so I'm going to let that motherfucker play, man. It is what it is.
Peace out.
Come on, come on, come on, come on. Sing it with me. Come on, come on, come on. SBE, SBE. I've been in the manosphere for a long, long time.
Oh, he hit his bad
watches me. SBE, SBE. My contents are born, my pussy is sore, so I created SBE. Sit right back, let me tell you a tale about a group of weak men going straight to hell. I'm talking about them PhDs, make the ghost of Booker T go weak at the knees. And you all know who I hate the best. It goes by the name of BGS. They're making me sick, it's plain to see. Now come on everybody, won't you sing with me? SBE, SBE. I've been in the manosphere for a long, long time, but nobody watches me. SBE.
Oh gosh, that's hilarious.
SBE. My contents are born, my pussy is sore, so I created SBE.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, man, that's just some comedic shit, man. I had to respond to it, man.
To answer your question, Bro Smoke, SBE stands for shame, blame, and explain.
Oh.
Yeah, man. You know, look, all I'm saying is, man, come on, man, cut the fuckery out, man. Like,
but that's hilarious.
Stop the fuckery, man. I know it was some silly shit. It took me 15 minutes to do it, man. I'm silly, man. So
did you use some AI or something? Did you use AI or something?
AR what?
Is that just you?
Yeah, that's me, man. That's me.
Okay.
That's me.
Okay.
That's me.
That's funny. Oh, that's funny.
You know what I'm saying? And you know who the person that I hate the best? You know that it goes by VGS. You know what I'm saying? So, man, it's goofy, man. I know.
Oh, that
goofy,
was hilarious.
Man. But anyway, yeah, man. So, anyway, man. I'll holler at y'all later, man. I'm about to check out your boy Keep It 100 shit. But y'all be good, man. I'll holler at y'all on the next one.
All right, peace out.
Peace.